You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to another Friday edition of Cards to the Moon. My name is Clark from 5cardguys.com, and you can also follow me on Instagram, YouTube, or on Facebook at 5cardguys. That's FIVECARDGUYS, all one word. I'm running solo again for this episode, but it's all good because I just wanted to give some shout outs to some of our podcast listeners. We got a lot of nice comments about the pod when we ran our recent contest just a couple weeks ago. And on that note, congrats to Eric at Cards for Sale 2, who won that giveaway. We shipped it out, so look for it in your mailbox in next couple of days. And stay tuned till the end of this episode for everyone else because we're going to do another small giveaway. But first, I just wanted to read out a few of those nice comments. And I want to start by shouting out Arthur at AOM3, who said he's been listening to the pod for 6 months. And he said, quote, "Because I've grown to enjoy it so much, I started to listen from the beginning, episode 1 and on, to catch up. Really crazy to hear about the different trends and the players that were hyped years ago," end quote. Now, Arthur, that's awesome. I'm not sure how long it'll take for you to go through all 5 seasons of Cards to the Moon, but I hope you're enjoying a few laughs along the way. He did also comment on our discussion in December 2023, so that's exactly 2 years ago today, when we talked about Ohtani potentially coming to the Jays or the Dodgers. And of course, we unfortunately know how that turned out. But here we are in 2025, still talking about Ohtani. And despite him being a Dodger, we still all want his cards. Now, one more thing from Arthur that I wanted to share. As you guys know, all our loyal listeners, this past year, we started having Will and Roy come on the pod about once a month to talk about Pokemon cards and WWE cards, which have been ticking up. And I think this is high praise for them from Arthur. He says, quote, "Absolutely crave more Will and Roy episodes. I don't collect Pokemon or WWE, but the content is gold," end quote. And Arthur, I have to agree with you. It's never a dull episode when I have the two of them on. And speaking of Will and Roy, Ty, he's another fan of the show and another fan of Will and Roy in particular. And he wrote to us, he said, quote, "I'm a long-haul trucker and like to listen to the show rolling back and forth across the country, occasionally coming north of the border too." And then he adds, "I only collect sports cards right now, but enjoy Will and Roy's contributions to this program and feels it adds a lot," end quote. Ty also mentioned that we should give them more props. And again, I agree with you. So hopefully this episode is one small way of recognizing their contributions. All right, I've said this before, but even though we're Canadian and we have plenty of hobby and podcast friends here north of the border, most of our podcast listeners are actually from the US. So I want to shout out guys like Andrew, who entered the contest, and he says that he's a fan from Massachusetts. We also have friends from beyond North America. So shout out to Arif, who's from Australia, and he says he loves listening to the podcast. I did have to apologize to him actually because we currently only ship out cards to the US and Canada for any of our prize winners, but I hope we can figure out the logistics to send future prize packs to other countries sometime in 2026. I want to also shout out Ricardo from our homeland, Canada. He says, quote, "Appreciate the great baseball content for collectors in Canada," end quote. So yeah, of course, we're glad to talk about the sport we love best. And you know what? Now with the recent Blue Jay success, I think we got a lot more baseball card collectors in Canada who hopefully will also tune into our pod. Shout out to Dan, who wrote that he's a regular Cards to the Moon listener. He says, quote, love the pod. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Dan. And as we say at the end of each episode, we're always thankful for all our listeners, especially the regular listeners who tune in every Tuesday and every other Friday. And on that note, shout out to Terry, MJ, MI3 Cards, the Memorabilia Gallery, the Vault Collection 83, Rock Top Cards, Austin and Sarah at Gem City Treasure Hunters, Ryan at DeRozan_PC Down Under, and Joe at Steelers_card_fella, who all entered the contest after hearing about it on the pod. Now, speaking of podcasts, if you're following other hobby content, you might have already seen some of them mention the Spotify Wrapped data that Spotify does at the end of each year. And I just wanted to share for you guys, for Cards to the Moon listeners, this 5th season so far has been amazing. For example, as I mentioned before, the data shows that our primary listeners are in the US, followed by Canada at number 2, which isn't a surprise. But making up the top 5, we also have listeners from Australia coming in at number 3, Hong Kong at number 4, and the Dominican Republic at number 5. And I think John made a joke in one of our chat groups that I think we talk a lot about Vladdy, of course, and Soto and Tatis, and maybe that's getting the attention of our Dominican Republic friends. We appreciate all of you around the world tuning into our pod, and that's just the top 5. Apparently, we reached 26 countries overall, which is awesome. And the growth numbers, just on the Spotify platform alone, because I know we have a lot more on Apple Podcasts as well, but just on the Spotify platform alone, it shows our total new audience increased 317% over last year. We're also up 62% for new followers, which all equates up to nearly 9,000 listening hours. So again, can't thank you guys enough for listening to Cards to the Moon. And I think this next comment by Steven at Even Steven Cards on Instagram really sums up our appreciation for all of you listeners. He said, quote, "Hey Clark, I heard about your giveaway on the Cards to the Moon podcast. Sign me up. I used to listen to a ton of different podcasts, but due to time and starting a nonprofit, I've cut down my listening to one podcast, yours. I really appreciate what you're doing and keeping us all up to date." End quote. Thank you, Steven. We definitely appreciate you. You know, we started this pod, Hyung, John, and I, because we really just enjoy talking about sports cards and collecting sports cards and flipping sports cards. But what kept us going for 5 seasons now is all of you guys who tune in week after week. So thank you all once again. And we still got a month left, but I'm already looking forward to season 6 in 2026 with some new, fresh content. But before we get to 2026, let's do another giveaway, like I teased at the top. And if you follow my content at 5cardguys or at Cards to the Moon on Instagram, you know that Hyung and I had Athletics outfielder Denzel Clark drop by at the studio when he was back in town. And he was gracious to sign for us some of his Tops Now cards, which showed his insane catch against the Angels. I'm sure you guys already know that catch, which won Premier Play of the Year by MLB recently. So we want to give one of those cards away. And I want to just apologize in advance to whoever wins, because the silver pen that we gave Denzel Clark to use to autograph the card, it didn't come out as well as we wanted, but you can still see his auto. So it's an autographed Tops Now card by Denzel Clark. And I also just received a Tops Now card of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hitting a homer off of Shohei Ohtani in one of the World Series games. I'll include that card as well. Plus, I'll also include a Tops Now card of the Ohtani moment where he hit 3 homers in one game and also struck out 10, which was an amazing feat. And I'll include that card as well in the prize pack. And just like the last contest, all you got to do is DM us on Instagram or email us that you want to enter. And if you heard about the contest on the pod, I will double your entry. And just like last time, we'll announce the winner on Instagram on Tuesday. Just check out the show notes if you want to look over all the details again. Okay, that's it for today. Good luck, and thank you once again. We'll have a brand new episode for you guys on Tuesday. Talk then. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.